Orson Welles behind the camera. A camera focused for this program on a fairly out-of-the-way and little-known corner of Europe, the land of the Basques. We've placed this camera directly on an international border. Over on that side is the ancient kingdom of Navarre, and there, where the low Pyrenees start ambling down to the sea, is France. It's still pretty heavily guarded up here, and for quite a time after the war in Spain, this border was closed, tight, a sort of miniature iron curtain. At least that was the theory. But in war or peace, old times are new to the people who actually live up here. This border has always been more of a theory than a fact. A theory of the French and Spanish governments, whose vigilant customs officers patrol it. No, the people who live here are neither French nor Spanish. They're Basques. And the rise and fall of other republics, other kingdoms, has never made them forget it, that they're Basques. We know for sure is what a Basque is not. Besides not being French or Spanish, a Basque is not Mediterranean, Alpine, Magyar, Celtic, Germanic, Semitic, nor Scandinavian. He isn't even herria. Nobody knows who his ancestors were. According to him, Adam and Eve were pure Basque. And it's true that he's positioned something like the Red Indians in America. He's an aboriginal. Europe before the other Europeans came along. To this day, he speaks his own weird language, a tongue no expert has ever been able to trace. Over there, in General Franco's half of the Basque country, this language is quite literally against the law. It's treason to speak it in Spain, so of course, since Basques will be Basques, their language is spoken just a little bit more on the Spanish side. What we're hearing now isn't part of some Basque conversation. It isn't a war whoop. It's a sort of call, a signal sung from France to Spain. It has to do with pigeons. There they are. Believe it or not, those pigeons are flying directly over the regular smuggling route. They do it every year. Every day, more than 1,000 people smuggle something or other across this border. I don't know how many pigeons there are up there, but I can assure you that smuggling is the biggest industry in these parts, except during the pigeon season. These are German and English pigeons, very orderly and methodical pigeons, and they turn up annually at this border, just at this time, just here, where the Basques on both sides, working in perfectly illegal and harmonious cooperation, catch them. Catch is the right word, too, because here pigeons aren't shot at. The rifle fire is only a sound effect, produced by that long strip of cloth on the pole. This saves ammunition and persuades the impressionable German pigeon that he is being shot at. Those wooden discs, suggesting at the same time that he's being chivied by hawks. But in fact, he and the rest of his flock are only being rounded up and corralled. A maneuver of the highest intricacy and beauty that begins in France and ends in Spain, where the birds are netted out of the sky like fish. That's a Basque invention. So is whaling. Yes, the fantastic notion that the world's biggest creature could be hunted and harpooned from an open boat was actually dreamed up by the Basque sailors on this coast. Let's not forget the beret either. Every Basque invents the beret all over again when he puts it on. There seems to be no end to the angles, no limit to the variations of individual tilt. They have their own customs and costumes, of course, and their own music, their own dances. Most important of all, their own ball game, pelot. I think we'll keep our cameras mainly focused on that ball game. Pelot is the overall name. Yoko, Gabi, Grand Chister, Rebo, Fronton. What we know is High-Lie are all variations. Everybody up here plays some form of it. All you really need is a ball and a wall. And a little Basque blood in your veins. Well, I haven't any of that. And I'm no pelot player, but I've grown so fond of this part of the world that I do feel somehow related to it. That orchestra you've been seeing and that you're still hearing, it's called the Estudiantina. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a group of teenagers who get together in a little village in the Basque country and make that nice music. And the guitar player happens to be an American, an 11-year-old American friend of mine. We're going to meet him in a minute. He's a man who loved the Basque country more than I do. Really more because he lived here longer. I've never lived here. I'm just a visitor. I came down to visit him and his family. It was Charles Wertenbaker, the writer, great friend of mine, a great man. And he died just a little while ago, and I came down here to see his family. Of course, the first thing I did was to look up his 11-year-old son, Chris, whom you've seen playing the guitar. I went over to the school just after hours, and the kids came rushing down out of the school and streaming through the streets. And the first thing they did was go to the Pelot court. Chris, come here. Hey, Chris. Hi. What are you doing? What are you playing?
Playing Pelot.
Pelot? That's a far cry from baseball. American boy to be playing Pelot. I don't even know the rules of the game. Are you a champion?
No.
You aren't? Well, who is? Introduce me to the champion.
Bernard.
Bernard, that's your best friend. Well, hello, Bernard. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Well, if you're the champion of this particular group, Bernard, you must have begun when you were quite young. Ask him.
Yeah, back when I was 3 years old.
3 years old. Well, people of all ages play this game. Sheep herders and mountaineers, the smugglers, the fishermen. They come in their day's fishing as soon as they've weighed in their catch, and they get right over to the Pelot court and start a game. Yes, a Basque is practically born with a Pelot ball in his hand. Fishermen just off their boats like these. Priests like this who've just finished saying Mass, and up in the mountains, shepherds, and most important for the local economy, smugglers. All divert themselves with some form of this vigorous game. It's supposed to be older than the Roman occupation. And there's a legend that the first game of all was played in the Garden of Eden, using the apple for a ball.
Yeah.
Well, there's one thing. Before Chris climbs out of the cherry tree, I'd like to ask him a question that a lot of people have asked me. Is there any money to be made out of this game? Do people make money out of it?
Well, the professionals are paid, I reckon, and they bet on each other.
Come on, give me a cherry. I'm hungry. That's right.
Well, this is Grand Schistera. It's the official name. What we're watching here. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Who's that wonderful player there, Chris?
Oh, he's Bishinarits, the best, the one who plays best.
He is.
Court.
On this court, is he the best player of the
he's the
game?
second best player, and I'd rather he win.
Who's the head of that other team there?
That's Paul Henry.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah, from the drugware store.
The drugware store.
From the hardware store.
The hardware store, that's right. We saw it. That ball really goes, doesn't it? Violently. Sometimes it's hit near me, and it scares me.
Well, it hits people sometimes.
I know it does. There's a story about somebody being killed by one deliberately.
Oh,
that I
yes.
heard. Who was that?
Pierre Kites.
He was a famous player, and he threw a ball at the chief of police, didn't he?
Yes.
Because the chief of police wanted to arrest him, and so he just threw the ball during the game and knocked him out, killed him.